Could all rise, please, for a pledge of allegiance and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If we just take a moment of silence and remember our fallen children in Florida. Thank you. Good evening. I know you were expecting to see Superintendent Riley here this evening, but he had a couple of pressing matters he needed to take care of in district and was also over at the Family Resource Center for their parent forum this evening before he went on to take care of those. So I will be subbing in for him today. Mayor, I understand there's a request to potentially move our public participation to the beginning of the agenda?
Yes, we're going to have we usually don't entertain motions at this point, but we're going to entertain a motion to rearrange the agenda in a second. But just as this is our first meeting too as a board, is there any way we can put the volume down a little bit on this mic? It just feels like it's a little loud. Thank you. And so just so as we come together the first time as a board, we use Robert's Rules of Order. If you want to be recognized to take the floor, just raise your hand, look at me, make sure we make eye contact. I'll be looking around most of the time, make sure that we get everybody. We'll just try not to talk over each other, and we'll go from there. So I believe that there's I can recognize one of the school committee members who has a motion. Yeah. School committee member Gonzalez.
I'd like to motion for the public participation to be moved up to the front.
I second.
Motion's been made and seconded by school committee woman Seward. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it. So we're going to move the public participation to the front. There is a list. The superintendent or the acting superintendent will make. We'll call the roll. The ground rules are 2 minutes. You're supposed to address the board to all as one, not any individual person or staff member. We try not to make personal attacks of any nature. Just try to make sure you keep it concise. If you talk slowly, we can get more information. And if you feel like you didn't have enough time to communicate what you needed, all of us, our information is on the website. Just get us an email or talk to us after the meeting. We'll make sure that we get all of the stuff you needed. But we're going to hold tight to the 2 minutes because we have a lot of people that want to talk. And you'll get a 1.5 minute warning. All right?
Okay.
Who's up?
First on the agenda is Mr. Malley.
Name and address for the record.
Humayun Mali, 53 Chester Street. Good evening, honorable members. Our citizens are united to express the best thanks to Honorable Commissioner Raleigh for her sacrifices and dedication to build our public school. Million thanks to you for the turnaround plan. Generation after generation, our children are grateful for your sacrifices that teach us how to be an active and vibrant public school. A school such as Lawrence with different cultural value, a public school that's going to be the best public school in the nation, with more level 1 school, more family resource center and family and parent involvement. Our community and Lawrence public schools are grateful to Honorable Superintendent Raleigh, but our job as a citizen is not over. We, the parent and the citizen of the city, in process of creating a petition in support of our teachers and the union. Our teachers under leadership of Frank McLaughlin has done excellent job. They are #1 reason for success of our public school. We demand of you to support our teachers and the union. We, the citizen, through a public and united petition in support of our teachers, ask you to sign a contract for our teacher. We offer this petition in support of our dedicated teachers. Our public school can be a better school if our teachers have a contract. Thank you.
Name and address for the record.
Good evening, Kemal Bozkurt, 11 Woodland Court. First of all, congratulations all 6 members. I have 3 things to say. Number one, I was going to mention, thank you, Adderley, you requested, not only for tonight, I think public participation should be first in the agenda always. Please, if you put this one in another meeting, I'll be very happy. And second is, hopefully, this school committee, our school committee, will get power back completely. It's not like the ceremonial committee, and hopefully you will have 100% power soon. And my third point is that I heard for new superintendent, there is a board. Board is going to select to new superintendent. If there is a possibility, and I hope these elected members, all of you, will be able to pick and choose our next superintendent. That's the reason you elected. Thank you very much.
Mike Bresnahan?
Name and address for the record, please.
Mike Bresnahan, 144 Berkeley Street. First, I'd like to say, I think it was very disrespectful for the superintendent not to be here for this meeting. That's my opinion. And the other thing, a little background. I taught math in Cambridge for 20 years. I have a master's from Harvard in education. Got a Employee of the Year award. And right now, I'm a math para at the Gilmet. I love the Gilmet. I think it has a very progressive administration, great students, hardworking teachers. But the testing is out of control. The kids have ANET testing, they have their regular tests, they're preparing for MCAS. It's testing centered. And even now, they're supposed to take the test on computers. So now they actually have to take time to show the kids how to input it. The curriculum is being driven by the test. The 8th grade math curriculum is basically test-centric. To me, it's deadly, boring, only teaches to one learning style, the abstract learners. I mean, when I used to teach, I used to bring in a number line, have the kids slide on it, bring in a wheel to teach circumference and radius, engage the kids in learning. You know, right now I'm saying the kids are getting test fatigue. They're realizing that they're seen mainly as test scores, even though I'm not,
30 seconds.
as test scores, okay? And I was wish the superintendent was here. This has to change because it's a burden on the administration, it's a burden on the teachers, and to judge schools by test scores when we know there are issues of race in class here at work, I think is criminal.
Maria de la Cruz.
Name and address for the record.
Maria de la Cruz, 26 Summit. One of my questions is any parents sitting at the decision to search for a school superintendent? Is there any parents sitting at that board?
The way public participation works, like it works at the city council, we can't respond. You can just address us, and we
Okay.
can't respond.
But, okay. My question is that we need a parent and a child and a student to sit down at the decision of getting, in the search of getting a superintendent. One parent to represent all the parents in the city is not enough, but at least we have somebody. And students because they know better. And I think that is very important. And I would like to congratulate all of you for being sitting here tonight. And in the name of the community, we have put our faith in you, and we hope that you're going to make the changes that this community need to move on. Then thank you very much for being here. And at the same time, we need you to work for the city of Lawrence, not to work for Boston. Thank you.
Thank you. Marianella Rivera.
Marianella Rivera, 2A Washington Street. So I just wanted to take a moment and talk during public participation to welcome all the parents and students here and community members that took the time to come today. One of the biggest issues is that our school committee meetings are not well advertised. Many parents don't know when it's scheduled for, what the location is. Some parents don't even know what the school committee is in general. I had the opportunity to meet a lot of parents at several of the schools in my district, and you know, one of the biggest concerns is just the lack of communication when it comes to these meetings, because a lot of parents are concerned about, we heard about testing, that they're teaching to a test. There are other numerous concerns in the community in regards to other issues like the fact that our kids are graduating and they're forced to take remedial classes because they're not ready for college. Yeah. So I just wanted to come up here too, just as a model for parents, because I know some of the parents told me that they were really nervous to come up here. And I just wanted to let you know that we're your neighbors. We're the people that you elected to represent you. It's not as intimidating as it seems. So I welcome you to speak tonight, but speak at other school committee meetings too, because your feedback is so crucial to what we do here. We're here to advocate for you, but we also need you to be here to advocate for yourselves, and so that we can hear how the school year is going and what we can do differently to make the experience better for our students. So I just wanted to take a second to welcome you all here tonight, so thank you for coming.
Nicole Villa.
Name and address for the record.
Yes. My name is Nicole Villar, 143 High Street. I'm here to say hello to everyone. Thank you so much for being here to participate, engage each other. Yeah, I'm excited about this process. Things I want to bring up to the table. I'm coming here with immediate concerns. From this afternoon, I was at the library in the kids' room in homework help, and there was maybe a fifth grader doing some math homework with fractions, and kid was crying in a corner, looking for homework help that he could not get because several adults couldn't figure out how to multiply. I don't know, there's a weird sort of like way that kids are learning mathematics, or particular ways. But anyway, the point is that there weren't any adults that could help. And there was a parent sitting there, sort of not sure what to do. And that's sort of the situation I came from
30 seconds.
today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ashley Martinez.
Name and address for the record.
Ashley Martinez, 550 Broadway. And I want to say congratulations to everybody on board. Okay, so I stand here as a parent, and every single child is different, and every school is different. And right now, they are all being generalized into a category, the same category. Why are we still continuing to allow people who aren't in our classrooms or at home teaching our children to choose and make decisions for our school systems? When I asked if it was okay for me to put my child into the relaxation room, DCF told me no, and that they would remove my children from me. So why is it okay that the Lawrence Public Schools is allowed to get away with things like this? At the end of the day, my child suffered. The teachers have said the echoes of my child's cries were heard through the hallways, and there was nothing they could do, and it broke their hearts. My child stands before you with no apologies and no answers. Is my kid safe in the Lawrence Public Schools? Is she safe with your teachers? These are answers I haven't received, and none of the parents here in Lawrence have received, still to this day.
Celia Negron.
Name and address for the record.
I am Celia Negron, 26 Logan Street. I basically came up here to just say, like, I think there's an issue with testing, and this is a situation that has been brought up to many people. You guys hear parents say all the time, my kid doesn't like to, take tests and things like that, and I've kind of been through that. I've experienced it, so it's a very, touchy subject with me. I think it's an issue that is being ignored constantly. Why should a kid walk into school and be so upset and sad because they have to sit in a chair for 3 or 4 hours taking a test that they don't know what's on? Like, they're told study for it, but they're not told this is what you need to study. They're told study, come tomorrow, and we're taking a test for 3 or 4 hours. It's an issue. Why is it being ignored when a child sits in class and is saying, I don't want to take this test? Why is that being ignored? Why do they have to sit through lectures and then take a test? That doesn't always reach through. Some kids, they learn visually. Some kids, they learn, everybody learns different ways. It's an issue that it just keeps going and going, but nobody's addressing anything. Nobody's doing anything about it. To me, I'm a student right now, currently in Lawrence Public Schools, and it's so dreadful when I have to walk into a class and know I have to take a test, but in my mind knowing I'm not prepared for it. And then I'm told it's my fault.
30 seconds.
Sometimes I don't know how to prepare for it. Sometimes they tell me to study, and I look at them like, well, can you tell me what to study on? They say, no. We gave you a little study guide. A study guide doesn't always help. A study guide tells you this may or may not be on the test. Why would I want to waste my time studying for something that I may or may not need? It's may or may not being thrown around, and that doesn't always help kids. It just makes them confused. We're tired and we're sick of just sitting in a chair taking a test after we studied for nonsense for 3 hours.
Thank you.
It's an issue.
Marquise Victor.
I'm actually getting replaced, but I don't want them right there.
Okay.
Name and address for the record.
Celeste Cruz, 50 Pearl Street. I'm representing Elevated Thought and the Lawrence Youth Council. We trust in this committee to have strategies and protocols in place for when the receivership is removed. We are asking to make sure that the youth are involved and that their voice is at the head of the transition. Please work with us to better know us and the Student Bill of Rights so that can be kept at the forefront for the city's educational future. Thank you.
Quinn Gonnell.
Name and address for the record.
Quinn Gannell, 157 North Street, Burlington, Vermont. So I'm a lifelong resident of the city, and I grew up here, and I taught in the public school district for about 8 years. So just have some words of words of advice for the new members, or just thoughts. First of all, please, I know it's been mentioned, but public participation, the fact that it's been moved to the end of the meeting, I apologize to anybody who was part of this decision, but I was personally offended by that. I mean, this is a democracy, right? What are we saying? What are we saying by doing that? Ask yourselves that question. Next was make sure you're doing your research. I think that, you know, as a doctoral student at UVM now, I've seen the power of research. Data is powerful. Look at what's happening in the schools. I know that we have made progress through the receivership, but really, let's look at some school climate surveys. Let's look at teacher morale. Let's look at student morale, sense of belonging, sense of community, sense of agency. I know personally from students who tell me that they feel that their administrators make them feel like the only reason they're coming to school is you know, because they are needed for performance data. You know, like, how would you feel if you're a kid and you're made to feel like the only reason you're there is because the school needs good attendance, or because the school needs to make sure that it graduates a certain amount of students? You know, that's not the student's fault.
30 seconds.
Lastly, Beth Sondel wrote a dissertation called "Are We Raising Citizens or Test Scores?" I would encourage everyone to Google that. It's incredibly valuable. And pipelines. We need pipelines of students from Lawrence becoming teachers. We need more multicultural advocates, role models inside the schools. It's also the school's obligation to go into the community. So it's not about informing parents, it's also about empowering parents, okay? If parents aren't showing up, it's not their fault, it's the school. The school needs to reach out and figure out how to solve that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jacqueline Mate.
Name and address for the record.
Jacqueline Marte, 86 Lower Street. My concern is like part of what Quinn said, you know, our kids, they don't have role models at school. I work with the kids and I see them all the time telling me how they're treated at school, how they're not respected. And yesterday I saw that for the first, you know, by myself. We were at the game yesterday, Lawrence versus Andover. Yesterday was Independence Day. The school did not celebrate that. Yeah, at their lunchroom, they have some music, but that's not celebrating their culture. And I feel that that's something that should have been done. Because in any other part where you have the majority of the kids being Dominican, it's something that should be acknowledged. Then at the game, one of the kids took our flag. And what the administration did, they sent 2 police officers to get the flag, and then the police officer did this with the flag. And people got upset and people were screaming at them because that was very disrespectful. That's my concern.
Thank you.
Joshua Alba.
Name and address for the record.
198 Prospect Street, Joshua Alba. I want to mention something about the history of Lawrence, Latino immigration, my parents and my grandmother coming over, and racialized disinvestment, suburbanization, and racial geography, segregation. It's interesting because like we got on the receivership some years ago, over 6 years ago, about 6 years ago, because the schools were doing so poorly. And I wonder, doing my research, thanks Quinn, in Latino City, this book from Lana Barber, which is super amazing, by the way, everybody read it, talking about how Latinos had to fight for power in this city. There was racist riots happening in 1984 where Puerto Ricans and Dominicans had to riot essentially in order to get their trash picked up from the middle of the street, because the mostly Anglo-European descendant government would not give them the services, would not give them the time of day. And so I'm saying is that if this is our history that's recent, right, very recent history, where Dominicans and Puerto Ricans are just figuring out how to navigate politics, and we're in this point now where we're more fully politically integrated, we can see in the room today, and we're still under receivership. I feel like this receivership is an extension of racialized disinvestment, racialized disenfranchisement to our community, not allowing Spanish people to be able to run their own institutions.
30 seconds.
Can I get a look at the signs that people have, by the way? So everybody can see it. Please show them. Lawrence cares. I think we're ready to take our schools back. Thank you.
Sebastian Brown.
Name and address for the record.
Sebastian Brown, 18 Yale Street in Lawrence. Can we see the signs one more time real quick? Can I just see them? So we got, just so, I don't know if y'all can see them. So we got a great one here, Unite, Our Future, Our Schools, We Love Lawrence. We got We Are Lawrence, Our Students Are More Than Test Scores. I think as Josh was saying, we are here because we're ready and we really do care. As other people have already said, I think there's an acknowledgement that there has been progress under receivership. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I think we know test scores have gone up. We know that graduation rates have gone up. I think there's been real progress. I think what a lot of us are really nervous about is that the same reason we got receivership is probably why any of this progress could be unraveled so quickly, because there hasn't been any investment. There's been so much investing around the testing, but there hasn't been any investment in the community empowerment and voice and sense of them taking ownership of the process, that if you don't have that, receivership leaves, and I worry that all this progress is short-term. It just falls apart because we don't actually have a community who's ready, who's been kind of empowered to be in the position to speak up and lead themselves. And so I feel like we're setting ourselves up from failure, and we're not learning from our past lessons of why we got into this in the first place. And some of these issues people have brought up already around, smaller seeming issues. We've heard doing door knocking around school lunches being disgusting, or uniforms not fitting right, not being good colors, or bigger issues like the relaxation room.
30 seconds.
And curriculum is a really huge issue that was mentioned about not having culturally reflected curriculum. None of that can change. The big and small stuff, none of that can change unless community members who actually, and parents and families and students who are actually going through that stuff have a say in the process. And so we're here, a lot of us are here. Can you raise your hand if this is your first ever school committee meeting? And I know a lot in Spanish too, but we're here because we want a transition plan, we want a time, we want benchmarks, we want a timeline. It's not enough just to say eventually it's going to happen. We want to know when. Is it 1 year, is it 2 years, is it 3 years? And let us be involved. And also in the process of superintendent, please involve us. People don't know, last night there was a meeting. In 2 weeks, they start to have the focus groups. Try to just make the whole process to include us, please. And then we'll be in the position to help our schools in the future. Thanks, guys.
Jennifer Jimenez.
Name and address for the record.
4 Union Street, Jennifer Jimenez. Many of you already brought up some of the issues that I wanted to bring up, so I'm left with the lunches. What are we feeding our children? Who's deciding this? Have you guys seen what we're feeding our children? Most of our children are hungry all day. They're not eating. We live in a high poverty area. Some of these children count on the food that's being provided in our schools. I want us to take another look at the lunches that we're serving our children. I think it's important. How can our children learn if their bellies are empty? Another point I wanted to bring up is when we have school delays, our children are being left outside until school begins. Some parents are dropping off their children way before school starts. These children are outside for sometimes 20 minutes. Some parents have spoken to the school individually. I just want to make you guys aware that this is going on and this is a problem that needs to be addressed. We need a system in place. We need to know, okay, we're going to have a delay. What's the system? Are the schools going to be are the children going to be in the cafeteria? Where are they going to be? I need to feel safe when I'm dropping off my child because I need to go to work to provide for my family. So those are the 2 points I wanted to bring up. Thank you very much.
That's the end of public participation.
Thank you. The names and addresses will be added to the record.
Moving on, we wanted to share with you some of the activities that have been going on here in the district. So we have 4 short videos that we'd like to go over with you to show some of the highlights from activities our students have been involved in. The first one is from the Acceleration Academy that took place during the school vacation week last week. We had about 1,560 students participating in 17 sites in grades 3 through 8, focusing on ELA, in upper school and HLC focusing on math and ELA, and in 10th grade focused on English. Attendance was 93%, which was good given the weather that we had last week, and students were excited to be there, and we had a huge turnout. So we want to show you what the students had to say about that.
Hi, I'm Marieli.
I'm Carlos. Welcome to the Acceleration Academy.
We are perfecting our keyboarding skills.
We are writing paragraphs about our reading.
And we are learning to answer open responses
by keeping it real. Restate, evidence, analyze, link. Thank you for letting us share this experience with you.
And for this time around, we had 161 teachers. Of those Sontag winners, 122 were current Lawrence Public School teachers, and only 39 came from outside districts to do the Acceleration Academy. So we're pleased to see more and more of our own staff maintaining those academies. Our next video is on the District Rise Up concert that took place on February 15th. It was a group of all of our bands, choirs, etc., who gave a district-wide performance at the Performing Arts Center. So we wanted to see some examples of the work that was done there. You can see Mr. Solero really likes to orchestrate, but he was also emulating what all the students who were in the walkways were doing, so he wasn't just doing that by himself. About 200 kids doing the same thing. Our next video is a celebration of one of our Lancers who reached the 1,000 point mark for LHS basketball. So he's a 3-year starter, and he was the Eagle Tribune Player of the Year last year, and we're celebrating his accomplishment. So this is Juan Felix Rodriguez.
Lancers get it into Reynoso. Cross-court pass to Rodriguez, takes a long three, and he knocks it down! Uh-oh! Juan Felix is feeling it! Folks, an unbelievable milestone. Juan Felix Rodriguez has hit 1,000 points in his career. Welcome back, Lancer fans. Thanks for joining us on LPS Media. The Lancers just picked up a big 88-79 victory over the Central Catholic Raiders, one of the best teams in the state. I am joined by Juan Felix Rodriguez. On senior night, he scored his 1,000th point of his career tonight. Juan Felix, 1,000 points, what does that mean to you? Is there anyone you want to thank?
I mean, I thank God at first, and then my mom. But it's very special because, I mean, nobody have done it in the past few years. So it's very special for me.
And our last video tonight is on the STEM lab in collaboration with the Boston Celtics and GE. They have a partnership for the Brilliant Career Play. It's a first of its kind interactive designer lab where they bring in all kinds of technology for students to learn how to utilize the technology for careers of the future. So they are working out of the Arlington Middle School lab in this particular video, and they're learning things like essential skills, gamified digital courses, and hands-on fabrication using the technology. And they're being exposed to career opportunities that might be available to them in the future using such technology. And this is a traveling lab, and has been to many different communities and schools across the state.
My name is Aiden Malini, and I'm from the Fab Foundation, which is part of the Brilliant Career Play Lab. And we bring all of the machines that we have here today, including laser cutters, 3D printers, vinyl cutters, Arduinos, which are tiny microcomputers, and much more, so that kids can experience digital fabrication at their schools. It's a partnership between the Boston Celtics and GE, and they've come together, as well as 2 other partners in addition to the Fab Foundation. Everfi and Brilliant Pathways have come in and all make up the Brilliant Career Play Lab that we have here today. So the Boston Celtics are our community connection to the schools that we travel to. Arlington Middle School, I believe, has done events with the Celtics in the past, unless there's a relationship with them. And it was a perfect fit for what we're going to be doing, or what we have done the past 2 weeks. We actually worked with the teachers and said, asked which types of projects they might be able to want to work on. And typically the materials that we're working with are introductory. And so we were able to do an introduction into the engineering design process, as well as design things on the laser cutter and cut things out or print things out on the 3D printers. They have complete and total access to the software. It's all free software, so students can use it here, and if they're interested, actually download it or simply log into it at home. The equipment that we have here is typically run by a Fab Lab facilitator, and only because we just don't have the time to train all of the teachers or the students. So I typically tell the students you're going to get 3 things out of this experience. You're going to get introduced to STEM careers of the future. You're going to learn the software and the hardware to make something, to digitally fabricate something, and most importantly, you're going to make something. You're going to walk out of here with a physical product of the work that you have done over the past 2 weeks. And be able to show it off to everybody. Students are completing an activity where they'll be designing simple circuits that are in the shape of a basketball court with copper tape, LEDs, and a button battery. They've been amazed, they've been inspired, I think, and I think likewise I am also inspired by their ability to basically take on a challenge. At the beginning of the week, we typically have students say, I need help, and I typically run over and I help them as best I can. But towards the end of the week, that I need help has become I can help. And students have actually been able to help each other in this process.
So those are just some updates on the type of activities students are being engaged in. As you know, we have some multi-talented students in the arts, in theater, in athletics, et cetera, and we want to always showcase some of their work because they're exceptional at what they do. So tonight, we're also going to do two updates for you. One is a receivership update on kind of where we are at this point in time with the receivership in terms of what we've been doing with the schools, what progress we're making, and where we're moving to, okay? So you have I know you have the PowerPoint. There is copies of the PowerPoint that are up here on this counter if people want a copy of it to review. So, as you know, we've kind of gone through our 4th year of receivership, and we're in our 5th full year of receivership under the turnaround plan, and we are still working on 4 pillars of what we want for quality teaching and learning. Our first 3 years, we spent a lot on developing people and on building kind of partnerships to run our schools, so engaging community partners to help run our schools, as well as building capacity for our staffing. But we now are focused heavily on our rigorous standards. High-quality enrichment has been an ongoing piece, but also working on effort and mindset and going with the change of thought that your talent is not innate. You can develop it as long as you are looking at the idea that students continue to grow lifelong, and we want to keep exposing them to things that will help them stretch their skill set. And the last one is really around critical thinking and fluid reasoning to have them have the 21st century skills. So those are the 4 pillars that we've been focused on throughout this current school year in terms of work and teaching and learning. Since some of the committee members are new, we just wanted to go through and rediscuss what open architecture is. You'll hear that a lot in what we do in the district. So open architecture was the way each school was given tailored autonomies in terms of what they were able to have control over within their own school, what the district would help facilitate for them, and some of the compliance and state regulations that everybody has to follow. There's no autonomy in those. So as schools demonstrated progress and growth, and we saw advancement in terms of their performance and their levels, they received greater autonomy to make decisions around things like curriculum they were using, their schedule, the types of enrichment that they wanted, the types of PD that they would have. And schools that were still struggling get a little more structure placed on them in terms of what we're going to continue to monitor more closely with them and support them with at the district level. So the flip is that central office isn't downward planning, but where there is their supports and kind of catching things if they're falling and making sure that they're able to build back up to where they need to be. So that's the whole, in a nutshell, open architecture. In terms of performance, and many of the public participants mentioned that, yes, we have made gains in the last 5 years, and we don't want to see those drop. So you can see from the testing, which unfortunately we are measured by and we are held accountable to the state for, we have seen over the last 6 years a 10% growth in ELA proficiency. We've seen a 21% increase in proficiency in mathematics. And you'll notice there are no scores under 17 for both of those areas because it was a hold harmless year because of going into the next generation MCAS. So they didn't want to do comparisons because it didn't really correlate well to the old MCAS. But in the STEM and the science, it was the old MCAS model across the grades that took it, and we did see growth there. We've seen a overall 16-point growth in science across the grades. Graduation rate is up. We're up 19% over the past six years. That is the 4-year graduation rate. It's not the adjusted count because you don't get the adjusted count until the fall when we see if students do return that may have left us. Dropout rate has gone down more than half in terms of 2011 to 2017. We're now at 3.7%, and we would like to see that even go a little lower because the state average is around 1.2. So we want to get down to that level if at all possible. In terms of talent, which we talked about also earlier today, we have been working hard at looking at homegrown talent. We are seeing more of our former LHS students coming back to teach in the district. We're still work we're doing to try and diversify our staffing to be more representative of the community that we're serving. But we are, at this point, we have 832 of our staff members are living in the city, and 168 of our teachers are Latino, and that's up from 71 in 2012. So there has been a concerted effort to try and bring more of our Latino community into our schools to be the role models that we want to see for our students. Dave? Thank you. So we've done a lot with arts and enrichment. As you've seen some of the performances, you've seen different activities that we've done throughout the years. In the arts, we have seen a growth. We now have 57 teachers who are focused in either theater, music, or visual arts across the district. Thousands of students are participating in school day and after-school programs, whether they're drawing, they're doing theater productions, they're doing chorus or band or choir. So we have thousands of children who are daily being engaged in the arts, which has been a major shift from where we were about 7 years ago. In the intramural world, we are running 23 sports programs. We have almost 4,500 students who are participating in intramurals during the various seasons of the school year, and we have about 3,200 students that are actively engaged now as we're coming into the spring season in intramurals throughout the district. And they do competitions on Saturdays in each of the seasons so that the schools all get together at the high school campus so that they can do competitions between the middle schools across the district. You know, we've been working on our special education 5-year roadmap. We're a year and a half in, or a little over a year and a half in, so we're going to give you an update on where we're at with that. Our priority has been inclusion for all, and we don't take that to mean just special education students, but we want all students to have inclusive opportunities. So we have all of our pre-K to 8 schools are working on action plans for implementation. They're in different stages depending on where their staff were in terms of professional development and what they needed to feel comfortable and confident in being able to address the needs of all students. The pre-K to 2 schools are implementing their action plans currently and have been working on them since last year. We have seen our full inclusion rates in the pre-K, early K grades go up by 2.9% over the last 2 years. We've seen our less restrictive placements in all grade levels go up in terms of full inclusion, now being up by 22.4% since June of 2015. So the trend is there. Staff are embracing the idea that students need to be with their peers. They need to be exposed to every opportunity to be able to expand their skill set and to learn some of the skills that they may not get if they have to go down the hall to a smaller group setting that is maybe a little more focused and targeted on a remedial model than exposing them to the full curriculum. We have done a full pilot at the Gilmet, which I have a whole slide on, but we have now moved 2 classrooms that were previously at our SES Annex, which was a day school, and have moved out of that school into the Gilmet, one at the elementary and one into the middle school, and have become included within that school. It has gone very successfully, and we're pleased with that, and we're looking at planning for potentially 2 more schools looking at that model of moving more of our substantially separate students out of substantially separate into more inclusive environments at the pace that they're able to do so. Our quality assurance measures are being finalized. We've had a lot of input as we've been implementing action plans about what makes the most sense, and we plan that those should be done by the end of the school year so we can be implementing them next year. So we've had a little shift in some timelines, but it was based on feedback from staff about what they needed first to be able to implement. In terms of our communication with families, we have a survey tool that's in place that's being done at the end of every team meeting. It's given to parents to let them respond to and tell us what they feel in terms of their satisfaction. I don't yet have data on all of that. Probably the end of the year we'll give you that. We've hired 2 full-time interpreters that are working out of the special education office who have been trained and gone through training programs and certified. So they are doing more of our training and our interpreting throughout the district, along with the 18 staff that we already had in-house that went through training earlier, a year and a half ago, I guess it is now. CPAC is continuing to work on recruiting members. They have an average of about 25 to 30 people coming to CPAC meetings, and the CPAC Leadership Board is actually doing all the agendas and helping to recruit the trainers or the presenters that they want to have at their trainings. So we're hoping to continue that and see that get more organized, and we invite people to come to those meetings the first Wednesday of every month at the library at 6 o'clock. We're using our home language survey to identify parent language and need for written translation or oral communication so that we have a backup in terms of documentation of what parents need in terms of communication. In priority 3, the high quality services, we've completed our needs assessment and identified some real need for specialized literacy and reading programs, particularly in the middle school up, for students who have not yet mastered literacy, and are working on developing those and training for staff around greater and stronger reading instruction at those levels. Research-based best practices guide is been developed, but we are fine-tuning it so that it will align with the DCAP and releasing them both at the same time this summer, so that they'll both go out together. And our monitoring systems are being finalized in order to gather our data on consistency of implementation. And then in professional development, you can see there's a whole list of professional development that we've been offering, and that list continues to evolve as staff go to different trainings and identify other areas where they still might need some training and support on how best to help address the needs of a diverse population of students in an inclusive setting. But all of the consultants that are working with us have been very impressed with staff's willingness and desire to learn more to be able to offer these types of services to all of our students, which is really great to hear from outsiders who are coming into the district. And I can't say I'm surprised. I know our staff is very, very engaged in wanting to develop their own skills and be able to address the needs of students. So the inclusion pilot from the Gilmet, this is just giving you a little more information on that. What we did is we took 2 classes of 6 students who were all on the autism spectrum and had been in a separate school, and moved them into the schoolhouse at the Gilmet, along with additional support from the BCBA and a richer staffing formula, because you need staff to be able to go out to the inclusion rooms with them. But those students are all in some kind of integration, inclusive setting at this point, whether they're starting with just meals and transitions, or if they're going into enrichment and specials, advisory, and those types of programs. And some are actually now getting into some of the academic classes, which is exciting to see. And I think what shocked maybe some of our parents who were a little nervous about it, the very first day of school in September, when the students arrived, they were nervous about how are they going to know what to do. They watched the other kids were lining up. They automatically just went and got in a line without needing to be told, because they had models to show them what they needed to do. So that is going really well. It will continue to be refined and tooled to make sure that those students are getting what they need, and we're going to look at replicating that model in a couple of school sites, but I don't want to say which ones yet because we're still working with the principals. And the next slide is on our facility improvements. I think you've heard a lot of this. I know the mayor is very up to date on what's happening with all of our projects through MSBA and accelerated repairs. So we've done some major projects, one in this particular building in terms of the boiler replacements, and that's about 98% complete, and being funded mostly by MSBA at this point. The roof in this complex is going to be replaced summer of 19, so that's on the list to get done. And the Arlington roof and boiler replacements are expected to happen this summer because those schools are in need of some major repair work. And we have 2 buildings that are on the pipeline through MSBA to help with our seating capacity and the needs where our seats are in dire need in this north central side of the city. So the Oliver School is in the pipeline, and they've completed the eligibility through City Council for what funding they have to do, and they're in the phase of hiring a project manager and architect for the design of that project. And that should get underway in, Anne-Marie, 2020? 2020 is when they hope to break ground on that project. And then the Leahy School we've put into the pipeline, and they're in the eligibility phase for work to begin for a new Leahy School, and we're hoping to expand those into larger buildings and not like 1 through 5s, but be able to have a full strand so you can go in one school and stay there through your 8th grade career path. Additional things we've worked on, of course, are the regular things like your replacements and repairs. The greenhouse at the Breen was one big project, refinishing the gym floors, all of those other playground things, installing buzzers, LED lighting in all of our schools to save on energy, and the new science lab that we have helped recreate in building. So there's been a lot of building work that's been done, but it's being well maintained. So I think that's the end of our receiver update. Okay.
I know that was a lot of information. I think it's worth just taking a couple seconds if somebody has any high-level questions that they think can maybe answer from the board. If not, maybe jot them down and maybe we can just provide them to see if they can come and bring it back to us as a response to some of this information. So we'll spend some time now. I'll recognize anybody who has a question from the board. Dr. Marinella.
I know you had mentioned that we were probably going to have another meeting for special ed, an update, but just one quick question came to my mind just because of the recent issues with behavior management. Are all the teachers, both regular ed and special ed, who work with children who are working on inclusion, are they CPI trained?
Not every teacher. There are people in every school that are CPI trained, so that they have somebody that can respond to be able to address the issue of de-escalation and hopefully not restraint, because we're trying very hard not to put hands on, but to be able to help contain the situation without needing to put hands on. We do have 4 staff that we are sending. We have 4 staff that are currently trained as CPI trainers, and we have 4 more that are going in May to become CPI trainers, so that we have better capacity in-house to keep up as people turn over, because you need to renew every year, and if you have full training, you have to renew every 2. So trying to keep everybody current is an issue that we're addressing.
Perfect, thank you.
One of the things that I think is important to note is the first is the arts and enrichment, and I think that's the secret sauce of the stuff that they do, and I hope that as we go forward, we're not going to back off of all the high quality arts and culture, all the high quality phys ed, and specifically the training that they do for kids on competition, and not just in the playing field. It's not just kids playing basketball and playing football. Kids are competing for stuff that use your mind in. And your discipline in, and I'm very excited about that. I think that's one of the things that the long-lasting impacts of the receivership will be the amount of arts and culture and enrichment that happens in our schools. And I don't want to go unsaid. We have made a lot of physical plant improvements. We made a decision to deal with the boilers across the district, and I think that for the first time in a long time, when the winter came this year, we didn't worry as much as that the boilers were going to be going down in the big buildings. And this school that I graduated from was a school that had 8 boilers, and it had been all the way down to just 1 boiler working. And today we have a modern boiler system downstairs. It looks like a spaceship. But those basic things just had gone undealt with. And importantly, part of that is that you can apply for money for this stuff, and we get reimbursed to the tune of 80%. So we only pay 20 cents on the dollar for all those improvements, and we just had never applied. And so I think that again, that we're back on this. We're fixing roofs, boilers, just the basic things that I think people just had not, and we're getting it from the state at a tune of 80%, which is great. Anybody else? Oh, Dr. Rivera.
Just speaking of the buildings, I was wondering what the current status of the Rollins is and what the plan is going forward.
The Rollins situation is that we are waiting for a bid to go out for repair work to be done on the school. So that has not happened yet. Until we get that back, we won't know what the timeline might be. We know we're staying where we are definitely through this year. We are not sure yet whether it might have to extend into the beginning of next year.
And just to follow up that, because I just have a little bit of information, that the insurance company has agreed to pay a sum we always go back on their sum and say we think it's going to be more than you've agreed to. It's just like when you had a car problem. We've actually been really successful in getting them to pay the adjusted number. But whenever you spend more than $30,000 of federal, state, local money, you got to go through this bid process, which is a very lengthy bid process, and make sure that you're not stealing money or filling anybody's pockets. So the bid process is kind of lengthy and involved, so that when we bring that school back up to historical standards,
Right.
because it's on the National Historic Register, that we do it at the cost it's supposed to be, and that the insurance company pays what it's supposed to do. And we have the quality we want. So that's the...
It is a more specialized repair because of the historic status of the building.
Madam Rivera.
Just a follow-up question, and this might be for you, Mayor Rivera, but the Rollins, when for the renovations, are they planning to make it more ADA accessible? Just because prior to the fire, I know that they were housing the medically fragile and handicapped classroom there, and there were issues accessing the building. There was only one entrance and exit that you needed to access the elevator for, and so I just didn't know going forward if that's going to be included in the renovations.
I don't know the answer to that, but I will tell you that if we wanted to, we got to fight with the insurance company to get it to that place. So if you could, just as a reminder to us, just shoot us an email so we can make sure we get into the conversation.
Thank you.
Anything else? Next report.
Okay. So we thought, because we have some new members, it might be good to do a primer on kind of how the budget works and how we get our money and all of that kind of thing before we actually get deep into giving you figures and what's going to happen with budget. So we thought we'd share that with you tonight to give you kind of how we get our money. But we're going to start with you about how the state gives out their money, because their timeline drives our timeline in terms of what we know when we prepare our budget. So the governor's budget came out at the end of January, and in that budget he had allocated more funding towards education. But his budget is only the first draft, and it now is currently sitting with the House Ways and Means. That should sometime in end of March come out with what they will call the House budget in terms of what they believe should be added, reduced, changed in the governor's budget. Then it goes on to the Senate Ways and Means to do the same thing. It's usually sometime mid-May-ish that they usually come up with their final Senate budget, that then all goes back to the governor for House 1 to revise and make any adjustments the governor knows based on what he knows revenues will be coming, or any adjustments that he needs to make based on what he knows the fiscal situation will be in the state. From there, it goes back to House and Senate for any veto, or the governor can then bring it to conference committee, which is House and Senate, to look at the budget and have them kind of go back and forth again on it and see if there's anything they were going to tweak or change. It goes back to the governor, who can do some vetoing of some of the things they want to put in. It goes back to the House and Senate for any overrides they want to make on what the governor's vetoing. And all that's supposed to happen and hopefully be completed by June 30th. Many years that is not done until sometime into July by the time the actual final budget comes out. So this next slide shows you what our timeline needs to be based on the city's charter. So we've already started the process of looking at our budget planning for 19. So we've taken all of our costs for this year, we've uploaded them into the system that we use, my budget file, in terms of what will there be the salary steps for anybody. Everybody's been moved to what their correct salary will be based on any union agreements, any contractual issues. And we are planning for a level service budget, which means we don't want to lose anything we have in place. We don't see any growth based on what we see as our preliminary number. I don't want to share those numbers yet because nothing's real, and we don't want to get ahead of ourselves in thinking we have money we may not have. Then we will be spending the next 2 weeks, starting Monday. We will be meeting individually with every school leader who has now spent the last 3 or 4 weeks meeting with their teacher leadership teams, discussing what are their needs, where would they make any changes, because they do have autonomy over their budget and where they want the monies to go. What staffing do they see that they really need within their buildings for the needs that they've identified as their goals and priorities? And they will come in and present all of their needs, where they're allocating their funds for next year, and we will do that with every single school between March 5th and March 19th. so that we'll get a big picture idea of where everybody's leading, what everybody's thinking are the major needs, what the district may be then focused on in terms of prioritizing resources to address the needs of overall across all schools. Then around the end of March, we will be presenting a proposal to the superintendent to look at in terms of what our budget would look like if we're going to do level service funding. By that time, we hope we will have some inkling from the state about where they think that Chapter 70 funding will be coming and what the actual net school spending will be based on where they are in the state budget at that time. The end of April, we do a budget presentation to you that goes through the overall budget, where the money's going by department, by school, the staffing that they have, all of that, so that you can then have a public hearing about the budget. And then it has to be to the mayor by May 1 under city charter. So although we might not have a final number till sometime in July from the state, we have to submit our budget by May 1 to be in compliance with the city charter. And then we go back and forth if we need to. If things change and shift, we make adjustments as need be. Okay? So the question is, how do we get our money? Where does it come from? So we receive our budget every year from two sources. The first source is money that is through the city, and that's what's recommended by the mayor and approved by the city council. That budget is usually referred to as our budget appropriation from the city. And its appropriation is a combination of the Chapter 70 dollars that the state gives to us for education and the requirement that the city has to contribute to meet net school spending. Okay? The state and federal grants that we receive, so we receive grants either from a formula because of our population, so our federal grants like Title I or Title IIA, which is professional development, that's based on our student population or our staff population and our demographics. Tells you how much money you're going to receive in federal grants. And we have some local state grants that are pass-throughs in terms of some of the extended learning time programs that are in some of our schools. The budget was received for a fiscal year, and our fiscal year runs July 1st through June 30th. Okay? That's pretty much municipal across the state. The state and federal grant budgets do not always align to that same time frame. So a lot of the federal grants are on the federal calendar, which is October 1 to September 30th. So they are trying to do more to align them. The state is trying to align them when they pass them through to us, but they're also doing a lot of those grants are coming out with a 2-year window of spending time. So that if you have money that you don't use by that end of September, you can continue to use until the following June. So we try and be very conservative, make sure that if we need that money, we're kind of holding it and making sure we have it for anything we have at the end of the year or to offset some things that we might need in the new year if money is tight. So there is a foundation budget. So when we talk that Chapter 70 that always gets put in the paper, the foundation budget is what the state determines to be our adequate minimal level of funding or spending for public education. So every municipality, it becomes their foundation budget, and it's based on the number of public school students in the community. So that's charter school and Lawrence Public Schools. The amount of spending is determined by a weighted formula, and it's based on student needs. So students that have more need and might be more costly to educate are given a higher weight in terms of what they will give you for allocations. And that funding, when it does come to the municipality, comes in to fund both their charter obligation and their public schools. It also tells you in the foundation budget, they calculate how much a district should spend in each cost category for teacher salaries, benefits, supplies, curriculum, school, staff, special education, et cetera. They kind of give you a rundown of what they anticipate your spending would be in those categories. The one thing foundation budget cannot cover that we do carry in our school committee or district budget are costs for adult education, costs for transportation, and costs for school building capital needs. Those are actually city expenses, but in the past we've always carried those in the Lawrence Public Schools budget because those departments the adult ed falls under the supervision of the Lawrence Public Schools, and the transportation supervisor works for us because they're doing the routing for all of the students. So cities can spend more than the minimum, but they can't spend less, okay? So in Lawrence, we happen to be one of the cities that receives one of the highest Chapter 70 allocations across the state. Our allocation is upwards about 94.5% to 95% of our funding for education comes through Chapter 70 dollars. So when they determine the foundation budget, it comes from October 1 enrollment, so it's a snapshot in time. So you work really hard to make sure you've got all your kids enrolled and in classes by October 1 of each year, because that's the count that will generate our revenues, not for the following year, but the year after. So our October 1 of this past year will be our budget for FY20. Our October 1 of last year is our FY19, okay? And the second part is that the state uses a multiplier to decide a per pupil rate. So every year they have a percentage that they add on, knowing that the escalation of costs, they have to adjust for that. Usually it's been about 1 to 1.5% in terms of what they're giving per student. Okay? So, an example, just to see how it all kind of plays out, because we pay for some things, we can't pay for certain things. So say the city gets this $186.7 million in foundation money, okay? Then we have to go and say, okay, well, there's charter tuitions that are not going to come to Lawrence Public Schools. We have to take that amount of money off. So if that was 17.1 or 17.7, that comes off of that total first. Then there are city-related costs that are net school spending eligible. So there are services that the city does for the schools that they are able to charge as net school spending. So some of those things are things from DPW in terms of school repair work, some of the services that they do in their finance department for processing of our invoices and our purchase orders and things like that, that they can assess as net school spending eligible. That money then comes off that big total. But then the city adds back in with the funding for the transportation, the funding for the adult ed, to get what becomes our final Lawrence Public School budget. Okay? So it's an up-down to get to what the final will be just for the school department. Okay? And you'll see all that. It'll all play out when we have the actual numbers for you. So how do we fund schools? So as we're planning, we said for the 19 budget, we are planning for a level service budget, which is a little different than level funded budget. We're hopeful that we will be able to maintain all services and not need to make cuts, but we always have that on the back burner that if the money does shift or change through the state process, there's always kind of this list of things that, well, these would be the things we'd be looking at first if we have to make reductions. The goal is always not to touch the classroom if we can. So it's always you look at things outside the classroom first. The schools have their own autonomy in terms of what they're able to do. They have an allocation that will come to them based on what their budget was this year, with just the steps for salary. They can make decisions about where, as a team, they want to move their money, whether they think they need to shift staffing or they need to maybe reduce something or change something, looking what hours they're working. Do they need more of this materials, so they're going to put money in that line versus another line. And because there's always shifting in staff at this time of year, so if they know they have a teacher that is making one of the highest salaries that's going to retire on June 30th, and they already have her letter or in place, they can then save or recoup the difference in salary for what they think the new position will cost and what that retiree is making, and be able to utilize that money somewhere else in their budget. But that all ends on June 15th. So once June 15th comes, you don't recoup anything after any changes that come in the following year, because there's always that cushion for needs that might come up, or when a staff member has to get hired that's a little higher than what you had in your budget, there's a little cushion to help make that happen. And then for our non-salary, we have kept the funding as level from last year. So for all those other things that they need, whether it's PD, curriculum materials, your office supplies, copy paper, all that good stuff that they need to operate day to day, they're at the same funding as they have been this past year. So they have to make some decisions about what is the critical thing for them to buy at this point in time. And the district tries at the end of the year, if we have any accruals that haven't been used, that's what we spend. We spend on things like the copy paper and all those other things that are essentials that they're going to need, and we stock what we can before the end of the fiscal year. Okay. So that's just kind of high, quick overview of how the budget rolls out. We will go into detail, probably starting at the next meeting. Christine Bavagna will probably be doing a little bit of a presentation for you about where we think we are with our budget, to give you some ideas about what the money's looking like and where we're seeing some of our priorities based on what we will be doing over the next couple of weeks with the schools. Okay?
Just, I'll take, I think, questions from the board. First and foremost, when we get to that point, I don't know if they got the slide still up. You guys put the slide back up of the time frame from the state, for the city? Either way, well, if we get to a point where the state dollars aren't known yet, and we have to still pay, regardless of whether or not the state passes the budget by July 1st, which is oftentimes the case, we still have to pass our budget by July 1st. So what we do is we take the most conservative number between the governor, the House, and the Senate. Because at least we know it won't be less than that number. And then sometimes we are very excited we get the highest number of the three, and then we adjust the budget at the same time. So just so people know, they can be in limbo because they're the state. They can run monthly budgets. We can't. We got to close the budget at July 1st. So if you'll see the timeline, their timeline is flexible. Ours is not. And so I just want people to know that we take the most conservative number. And then secondly, the foundation number as presented is known as a flawed formula.
Right.
There's millions of dollars that are supposed to come to communities like Lawrence that aren't coming, but they haven't fixed the budget. They haven't fixed it yet. And I think that there's also money that hasn't been refunded to communities smaller than us for their the money that they give out for charter schools.
Right.
So because neither of those things have been fixed, they've kind of just left it in limbo. They feel like since everybody's not getting what they need, they don't want to fix either because both of them cost money. But luckily, the new person who's in charge of the Senate right now, her name is Harriet Chandler. She knows she's not going to be the Senate president for very long. And so she has had one of her things that she wants to get accomplished before she leaves is to fix this formula and also get the money back for the charter school for the smaller communities.
We know the new commissioner is going to be an advocate for fixing the formula.
That was the next thing, and having Jeff Riley as the commissioner of DESE, who sees the pain that this causes, and an advocate for that, I think is going to be super helpful. And I just want to put those two things in there as to help with the budget picture. I do have as an agenda item with the receivership board to hire a CFO. I've had the understanding that the chair wants to put the budget, the checkbook online, so everybody can see what every check that gets cut. I think those two things will go a long way of opening up the budget for everyone. So I'll take questions if folks got some. Dr. Rivera?
Thank you. So the turnaround plan recommendation says that the school committee is basically ineffective, so we're kind of paying for the sins of our fathers, right? But they recommended that we be provided resources or other opportunities for training. Is it possible that our school committee can undergo a workshop on the budget with the budget manager?
Sure. Now, I don't know, did you do any of the required training for new members yet?
I have.
You did, because you were on previously.
But I have again.
You did it again.
I did it again in January.
Have others been involved in the required training?
I think that we haven't had any new training for the new members at all. I shouldn't say that. I know that we haven't had any new training for the new members, and that all the current members who are here tonight have gone through the trainings that they provided from the last term. But I think this was this was not one of the trainings. I don't think
We didn't do a training on the budget.
We didn't do the budget.
No, we can
training.
arrange that. That's.
We had budget training last year
But it wasn't like a thorough.
with the two gentlemen.
From the MS schools.
Yeah, we
Okay.
did.
But I think it's worth doing again if it had, and so if we can get it.
We can reach out to MASC, Mass Association of School Committees, and see.
But also with the budget manager as
Yeah,
well.
we would do.
To do a line item, kind of go through everything. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Pat Mariano.
My only comment, and Mayor, you alluded to it, is the Foundation Review Committee that has made recommendations that the state hasn't acted on. And I'm encouraged to hear that there is someone that's going to push for those recommendations to be implemented, and that the budget becomes equitable throughout these the communities that need the money.
Yeah.
So thank you for, explaining that to us.
And then I did give you an invite to the District Art exhibit, which is April 5th at the Heritage Park from 4 to 6 p.m. So if you want to see some of the talents of our young artists, I would invite you to go and visit that. And for those of you who are into the dance end of the world, this Friday night is our Dancing with the Stars Teachers Edition at 7 o'clock at the PAC Center. So if you want to come and see some great performances, these are teachers who volunteer to dance. I've done it 4 times, but not this year. And the student has to teach you a dance, and you get picked and matched with the student by pulling your name out of a hat and a dance out of a hat. So you have to learn the dance in about a 5 or 6 week period with the student and then get on stage and perform it. So kudos to the staff that get up there, because it's not easy. And the students want to do all the big moves. So if you want to have a good night, $5, I think, entry fee on Friday night, we are welcome to come and join us. That's all I have, Mayor.
On the agenda is other items. We don't have any other items listed, but also questions. And I think it's appropriate, since we are meeting for the first time, if we do 10, 15-minute questions from the board. If you don't have them, that's okay. We can put them always in email form to the staff, and we can get information on it. I think that's in short order. We're going to get open meeting training and conflict of interest training, those basic core things that elected officials should have as they do the citizens' business. And so, short of that, we'll take some questions. Seeing, go ahead. Dr. Rivera?
So just listening during public participation and being on the committee already for a term, is it possible that we could have a special meeting to discuss transition plan, like a specific plan for the school committee?
I can put it out to the receiver and see where that stands and what they're thinking about.
Thank you.
Anything else? See none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there seconded? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those against? The ayes have it. Thank you and good night.